Hello, welcome to our lesson on variables and expressions. Well, let's start by writing down a couple of definitions. A variable is a letter used to represent a number, and the number can change. Examples of variables would be like the letter X or the letter Y. So those are probably the two most common variables that we see. So a variable simply represents a number, and it can be any number. A constant is a number that does not change. So examples of constants would be the number 5, or maybe a fraction like 1/3, or a decimal like 0.7. Those are all examples of numbers that do not change. 5 is always 5. 0.7 is always 0.7. Okay, now, there are different kinds of expressions. Now, expressions are simply just math sentences. Numerical expressions are math sentences that contain only constants. So, for instance, like 10 plus 5 times 3. Okay, that's a numerical expression. There are nothing but constants there. Okay, algebraic expressions contain one or more variables, like maybe 2 times x, or 2x, plus 3 minus, let's say, parentheses, x plus 1. Okay, so here we have an algebraic expression because it contains a variable, and this time the variable is the letter x. All right, so numerical algebraic expressions. All right, operations. Here we have the plus sign. Okay, so that's our addition, right? And let's write down some words that mean addition. So, for instance, the word sum, S-U-M. Okay, the sum is the answer to an addition problem. So, like the sum of 3 and 2 would be 5. You could also say, use the word increase or increased. The number 3 increased by 2 is 5. Okay, so that means we're adding if we're increasing the number. Okay, or you could just use the word add or added. 3 added to 2 is 5. Okay, so here we have the subtraction symbol. So the subtraction symbol, if we're talking about the answer to a subtraction problem, we're talking about a difference. Okay, the difference between 10 and 7 is 3. Right? 10 minus 7 is 3. You can also say, like if I'm doing, let's say I'm subtracting 7 from 10, I can say 7 less than 10. Okay, so less than is also used to represent subtraction. And you can say minus, right? 10 minus 7. So these are all examples of words used to represent that operation. So here we have our x, right? And this is for multiplication. But notice that for multiplication, instead of using the letter x, we're going to get away from that because we just talked about how variables are letters that represent numbers. X is a real popular variable used to represent a number. And so we want to get away from using x to show multiplication. So instead, we're going to use like a dot. Maybe you use that already. Okay, you could use a dot to represent multiplication. You can also use like a little parenthesis to show multiplication. Okay, so anyway, we'll get back to that later. So words that represent multiplication. Well, product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So the product of 3 and 4 is 12. You can also use the word times, right? 3 times 4 is 12. And that's pretty good. We usually use those two, product or times. Okay, and then here we have our division symbol. Now, the answer to a division problem, we'd use the word quotient. Okay, so the quotient of 8 and 4 is 2. And you can also use the word divided. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. All right, so those are some words we can use to substitute in place of our symbol if we had to write out our problem using words. Okay? All right, how you doing so far? Okay, so now let's take some words and let's write them as algebraic expressions. So our first example here, Eve reads 25 pages per hour, and notice that the variable h is representing the hours. Okay, write this as an algebraic expression. All right, so if I want to write down as an algebraic expression how many pages she would read total, I would write this as 25 times h. Okay, and remember, we're not going to use the x, right? We're going to use either the dot or the parenthesis, or you can even write just the letter right next to the number. So 25h means 25 times h. And this should make sense, right? If she reads for 1 hour, she would read 25 pages, right? If she reads for 3 hours, she should read 25 times 3. That would be 75 pages. So this would be our algebraic expression to represent how many pages she would read. And notice that h can change, right? It's a variable depending on how long she read. Okay, here's our next one. Sam is 2 years younger than Sue. Sue is y years old. Write an expression for Sam's age. All right, so how do you think you'd write that if Sam is 2 years younger than Sue? Well, if y represents Sue's age and Sam is 2 years younger, that means he's 2 years less in age, right? So that would be y minus 2. That would represent Sam's age compared to Sue's age, right? And this is a variable because depending on how old Sue is, Sam's going to be 2 years younger. If Sue is 12, then Sam is 10. If Sue's 18, Sam is 16. Okay? All right, good. Okay, we're almost done. Doing a good job. That is all for tonight. Remember, read some books.